All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. It is today, and today is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. This is going to be a great day. We're going to do another Gavin Ortlund thing, and I have a feeling that I'm going to agree with Gavin Ortlund in this video. So this is going to be a positive Gavin Ortlund thing. Now, to be fair, I don't think I'm going to agree in the same direction as Gavin Ortlund, but I think he's right about the basic topic. We must do better. Do better. That's the thing. And so, we're going to get into it. Have a good time here on a Friday. Oh, I said the day. Well, whatever day it is, when you're watching, have a great one. Let's begin. All right. Yes, we are going to watch this video and just do our normal commentary to it. And I think this is a great time because, I was also thinking of doing a little video just kind of explaining what I do on this channel, because every time I start talking about a different person or issue, and maybe it hits a different audience, people always question, why do you do this? Don't you have anything better to do? Why do you got to do it this way? That kind of thing. And, because I did say something to James White, regarding his comments about John Harris and, how much of a problem what he's saying is regarding the debates and all this kind of stuff. A lot of people have asked me, why is it that you're doing it this way? And why do you got to say it that way? Why can't you be more ironic and all of this? And here's the thing, guys. Like, I just want to say this, one thing that I've made abundantly clear, absolutely clear, is that, when I talk about, someone, especially someone that, we all respect, that's on our side and stuff like that, it's not from a place of like, hey, you shouldn't listen to him anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I've never said, in fact, I've clearly said the opposite, that someone like Dr. James White, he has a lot to offer the church, right? And so when I critique him on a certain thing, it's always with the goal in mind, like, of improving the discourse, right? Improving the online discourse. And especially in Dr. White's case, I think, having a Dr. White civil, conversation, a civil critique of what some of the Christian nationalists were doing would be so helpful. It'd be so helpful for the Christian nationalists, I think, but it would also be helpful just for everybody, and instead of what we normally get, which is just a lot of really childish discourse. And I think we can do a lot better than that. We've got to step up the game, and I think that, the reason why I do it the way I do it, where I'm kind of having a good time and laughing and I'm a little loud, that kind of thing, is because I use entertainment, I use humor, to sort of soften the blows a little bit, you know what I mean? To sort of disarm a little bit. That's something that it's a powerful tool, you know what I mean? And you can use it in any part of your life. I mean, I'm in sales, I own my own business, but obviously that means you're in sales. I'm in sales, and just some humor goes such a long way when it comes to disarming and priming the pump for a tough conversation. You know what I'm trying to say? And so there it is in a nutshell. You know what I mean? It's not from a place of disrespect. It's from a place of, hey, I want this to be better. I want to have a good result. Sometimes you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. Just sometimes. Sometimes you can make an omelet and have the eggs totally intact. I don't know. Maybe not. But anyway, so that's the thing. So, and it's in stark contrast, I think, to a lot of what we see out there. What we see out there so often is, hey, I disagree with him on sacralism, and, therefore he's barely reformed, might not even be a Christian, and you really should never listen to him. I don't listen to what they say, so why should you? I really don't think that that's the way forward. But, everyone's entitled to their own perspective. Everyone uses social media for different things. And so there you go. So anyway, here's Truth Unites. Gavin Ortlund, Truth Unites. It's titled Christian Online Discourse. We must do better. Let's begin. All right, let's just make sure my mic is still working here. Yeah, we're still good. I think we're still good. All right, let's begin.
A lot of my videos are somewhat intellectual, trying to do apologetics and advance understanding on various issues, philosophy, church history, things like this. Not this one. This one is going to be very simple,
This
just to
one is
ring the
not.
alarm bell
This
about
video is
something
not
that I think
intellectual.
is so important that every single human being should be reflective about it. And what I'm talking
This
about
video is
is
just
the way the
nonsense.
internet is shaping us. There's so much to this. Just today, I was talking with friends over lunch about the challenge with loneliness and social fragmentation, especially among younger people. It's a whole other thing. But I want to focus on disagreements and tribalism and the combative way that we relate to each other. I read recently that Thanksgiving meals are getting shorter because of political disagreements. I thought, what a fascinating little window into a larger issue. The world is getting more polarized. We're losing the ability for civil disagreement. Now, am I crazy with this? Let me know in the comments if you think I make too much of this.
I think you make too much of this because I do think that this is kind of how it's always been. You know what I mean? People have had sharp disagreements all the time. And I think that what's happened though is that we've kind of lost the ability to have a heated conflict without like losing respect for the other person. Like heated conflict that has nothing to do with how civil something is, in my opinion. I think civility can happen with very intense content. You know what I mean? And I think what's happened though is that we get this thing where it's like if we don't have total agreement and then there's some antagonism there as well, that automatically means that the person on the other side is an enemy, is against you, wants to destroy you, wants to ruin you. And that is not the case. We can do much better than that, right? We got to get over ourselves. I've given talks about this exact problem. So Gavin Ortlund is keying in on a problem, but I mean, we'll see what he says about it. But we have to get over ourselves. We're not that big a deal. You know, if Dr. White wants to hate on me and to say that I shouldn't be listened to and that I'm totally wrong and that I'm not a fool and whatever it is he wants to say, I don't know that he said any of these things. I heard he mentioned me in the dividing line, which is impossible because he said he would never mention me again. So which is it, Dr. White? But anyway, but I can't take that personally. That doesn't mean that Dr. White is now my enemy and everything he does is wrong and stuff like that. We've got to be able to get over it. Think back to when you were younger. Honestly, think back to when you were younger. And if you're anything like me, you had some friends that sometimes you fought. And not even just verbally, like even physically, right? I've been in physical fights with friends of mine. There was a friend of mine named Brian. We used to call him Dirty Shoe. I don't even remember why we called him Dirty Shoe, but we used to call him Dirty Shoe. His name was Brian. And I remember one time he attacked me, and I totally deserved it. Like he physically attacked me, and I definitely deserved it. I was kind of antagonizing him for whatever reason. I was just being a complete jerk. I was being a jerk, no question about it. He physically attacked me, and we fought. You know, not for very long, but we fought. Like we fist fought, and then, you know, an hour later, you know, we were hanging out having a beer together. Our relationship was stronger than ever. You know what I mean? And it's like, that happens. You know what I mean? That happens. I always talk about rugby. You know what I mean? In rugby, you know, we're there and we're trying to take the head off the other team, right? And it's a very physical, very violent sport and very aggressive. And in rugby, it's insane. This happened every time in rugby. We would play. We would be trying to, you know, hurt the other team. You know, not in a illegal way, but you know what I mean. And then afterwards, you always share a beer. You always have more camaraderie afterwards. Like you love each other. You know what I mean? Like we all know how to do this. We do this with family. We fight with family, but then we're really on their side, right? We're on their side as we're fighting with them. We know how to do this. But for some reason, you know, in Christian circles online, it's like, well, if you don't have absolute agreement, then you're the enemy now. You don't care about the truth. You don't care about consistency. You're not even you're ostensibly reformed. Ostensibly reformed. If you're not theonomic, postmillennial, you know, whatever. It's like, man, like why have we come to this place? How have we come to this place? And so when people see my content, They think, well, I'm against Dr. White. I got news for you. I'm not against Dr. White. I like Dr. White, and I think Dr. White has a lot to offer the church, even now. And there's some topics where I think he's wrong, and that's okay. You know what I mean? So we've got to cultivate less of a softness to us, where it's like everything's a personal attack, everything's this, everything's that. Look, there's a time to defend yourself. I get it. But I think it's much better to let your friends defend you if it's that time. That's what I think. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's all I'll say.
I think this is a real problem. I think this is like a significant crisis that we need to say, time out. Let's look at this.
And Gavin is totally guilty of this, right? I mean, like he takes all this stuff so personally, and I think where it comes from is you take yourself too seriously. If somebody thinks that I'm a heretic, if somebody thinks that I'm a whatever, whatever. I mean, who cares, right? And here's the other thing too. I think there's the time to defend yourself is when it's a strategic thing, like when there's a good reason to do it, right? Beyond just defending yourself. There was this one time that it was a long time ago. Someone from Gospel Coalition called me a Nazi, and it was so funny. Like, I mean, I've been called a Nazi so many times, it's just ridiculous. But somebody called me a Nazi, and I forced him to apologize to me. I remember I called his church, because he was an elder or something at the church, and I called his church to talk to him, and eventually I did talk to him, and he apologized publicly. The reason I did it was not so much that he called me a Nazi, but was because of the reason he called me a Nazi, and I wanted him to admit that he had no idea what he was talking about. And the reason he called me a Nazi is because there was somebody in the comments of my videos or my tweets or something that I had blocked or muted or something like that. And I wasn't seeing his comments. And the reason I was a Nazi is because I wasn't refuting what he had said. So that was enough. So the only reason that he called me a Nazi is because I wasn't refuting the person he feels like I needed to refute. I was staying silent about it. And in this case, it was because I didn't see the comments, but it could be anything. It could be just, I don't go strongly enough against Corey Mahler, so therefore I'm a Nazi. Like, I wanted him to admit that was stupid. And he did. He admitted that was stupid. And it was very good, and everybody had a nice laugh, and we all felt closer to that day, and it was a strategic defense of myself. Look, I don't care if you think I'm a Nazi. I don't. But if there's a strategic reason for me to call you out on it, I certainly will.
Figure this out, this mentality that the people over there aren't just wrong, they are evil. Now, sometimes that's true.
Yeah,
a lot of
times
times we're making this about every disagreement, and this is increasing and very, very worrisome. And the internet is one factor that fuels it, but it's not the only one. And I think everyone should care about this. So if you care about society, the inability to have civil disagreements, respectful disagreements with people.
This is the rub, right? And I hope he gets into this. I have my doubts, but I hope he does, right? Deciding what civility is such an important thing, because most people, from Gavin's perspective, look at the aggression of the tone. They look at the aggression of the words, and that's how they determine whether it's civil or not. And that is a big, big, big mistake, because that's not what the Bible says. The Bible warns about smooth-sounding words. The Bible warns about people when they butter you up and they sound ironic, but there's war in their hearts. That's what the Bible warns about, right? Consistently, it talks about people that sound real nice, they sound real loving, they give you the words that you want to hear, but there's war in their hearts. And so we need, and it doesn't mean that if someone comes at you aggressive that they're automatically good. We don't want to make that mistake. But we can't let the tone of the person determine what civility is or not. Because I could come hard against Dr. White and still have love and peace in my heart. There's a time for aggressive sounding words. In fact, there's a time to break down. There's a time to tear people down. But it depends on what your goals are, right? So if I'm going to make a statement like Dr. White is making an obnoxious a list of demands to debate Stephen Wolf, and all of that. If I do that just to ruin his reputation, well, yeah, that's not good, right? But I'm doing it so that we can move forward. We can actually we're trying to shame him into debating Stephen Wolf because it would be so helpful, and there's no reason to treat Stephen the way that he's treated him. There's no reason for it. And it's the same with Jeff Durbin. People got mad at me for mentioning Jeff Durbin. Look, I didn't bring Jeff Durbin up. Dr. White brought him up. But again, we've got to shame Jeff Durbin for the way he's treated Stephen Wolf, because all of a sudden he's like, yeah, I'd love to debate him. Well, when you had the chance, you treated him like a jerk. It's as simple as that. So stop that's cap. That's cap, bro. That's what cap means, right? I don't know. I'm an old guy, so that's cap. He's capping. He capping, yo. Yeah, I am trying to shame Jeff and James for this. I am, 100%. But it's for the purpose of, look, you should feel ashamed for how you've treated this guy. You really should. And so let's move forward. There's a time to tear down. There's a time to build up. You know what I mean? There's a time for smooth words, and then there's a time for aggressive words, right? And so when we decide what's civil or not, we cannot get distracted by the tone of the words, because the things that I'm saying would be just as aggressive, just as peaceful if I had a tone like this all the time, or if I talked the way I talk. That's just how it is, right? Be careful for people that have smooth words, but there's war in their heart. And we're going to talk about an example of that in just a minute, I'm sure, because I think I know where he's going with this. And I have a great example to show exactly why this is an issue today.
Major issue in society, but especially for Christians.
It's
I
true.
just got to be honest. I think for the most part, how do I say this? I think we're basically doing pathetic with a few exceptions. There's some wonderful people out there who are Christians, who are managing a social media presence and using social media in a wonderfully edifying, godly, Christ-honoring way. But I think they're more the exceptions than the norm. I think most of us struggle with getting pulled into Galatians 5.
I don't think it's the exception. I think that the people that are using social media for ill, they're the minority for sure. I just have a much more positive outlook on the situation. But I do think that obviously the ones that are going overboard and stuff like that, they get more attention. That's for sure. But I don't think it's the exception. You know what I mean? I really don't. I mean, maybe that's just because I'm an optimistic guy. I don't know. But when people start to say that, and this is one of the problems, right? Because he said this in such a nice way. I mean, Gavin's a very nice guy, you know? He talks very ironic and stuff like that. And here's the thing, though. He just ripped the church. He just ripped the church. The church doesn't know what they're doing. The church, look at the way the church acts. They're just horrible online. And he didn't say it, but the way you receive this often is like, well, they're worse than the pagans at this. And often people just outright say it. We're worse than the pagans. I don't see it that way. And, I see this on both sides, too. Right now there's a controversy about, legitimacy of pastors and how many of them are legitimate pastors or not and things like that. And I see people on my side talk about how most pastors are illegitimate. That's just not the case. In my opinion. In any case.
15.
Okay.
If I just may, again, tell me if you think I'm off base, but every now and again, we don't need to be super nuanced and qualified. We can just kind of say, we got an issue. Here's
every
the
now
issue.
and then.
The issue is Christians devouring each other. I think that's happening right now. I really think this is something that is not just a small matter. Let me explain why this matters so much. I talk about apologetics. This is an apologetics issue, maybe one of the most important ones of our day. So let me put these two passages up. John 13 is about loving other Christians. John 17 is about unity with other Christians. Note what I embolden in each. They have an effect on those outside the body of Christ. By this, all people will know you are my disciples, Jesus says, if you love one another. And then he prays for unity so that the world may believe you have sent me. So point is, simple point. Again, I'm not going to be super nuanced in this, just to hit one simple point. The world is won over to the gospel in part by how Christians treat each other.
This is so true. I agree with this completely. But it's here where I have to interject again. the warning about smooth words, right? Because so often, and again, we haven't watched this whole video, so maybe he won't do this, but I have a very strong feeling he is going to do this, right? So often we make the determining factor the tone, the pace of the words, the style of the words, and stuff like that, instead of what's actually happening. You've got to look at the actions over just the tone and pace and style of the words. Because just this week, we had David French, who I'm sure Gavin Ortlund just absolutely loves. They may go to the same church. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Gavin Ortlund gets on public TV on a major news station and just rips Christians to shreds. But he does it with smooth words and a gay lisp. He does it with soft, buttery words. And he goes to the pagans to rip Christians to shreds. And Russell Moore's done it, and Tim Keller's done it, and all of the people that I'm sure Gavin Ortlund will put it as an example of how they're using media correctly. And they come to you with smooth-sounding words about how awful most Christians are. That is the problem. That is the problem. And if you think about this as an apologetics issue, what kind of a sales pitch is that? Yeah, come to the church. Come to the church. We've got forgiveness in Christ. By the way, when you join us, you're joining a group that's worse than you are at almost everything. They're more pagan. They're more hypocritical than you at almost anything. Look at these guys. They love Trump. They love Trump. They love their guns. They love violence. They hate immigrants. I mean, look at these guys. That's the sales pitch. But they do it, and they sound so nice. You know what I mean? And some of them, a lot of them, in fact, it's interesting. A lot of these kind of guys, the more liberal Christians, they've got the voice. They've got the, yeah, I really like that. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. This is the definition of what the Bible warns you about. Buttery, soft words, war in their hearts. And so he's right. He's definitely right. This is an apologetic. It is an apologetic. But what matters is what you're doing. I got all up in arms years ago. I was ranting and raving from my basement, in between sales calls. People think this is all I do. This is not all I do. I only do that. I only rant like a lunatic for like a couple hours a week. You know what I mean? Like, give me a break. But I remember during COVID and all this, I was ranting and raving, whatever. And what was I doing? What I was doing was I was defending the church's ability to meet, the church's love, the church's definitions of reality. Meanwhile, all of the people got up that Gavin's talking about, he would probably use as examples of what they're doing, and it's so right. We're ripping Christians to shreds. They don't even love their neighbors. Well, that's not how they said it. I think what you'll find is that many Christians just don't even know how to love their neighbors. Jesus Christ taught love, and so get the vaccine and get the shots and cover your mouth and don't go to church because it's too dangerous. You got to love your neighbors. They said it so nicely. But it was war in their hearts. And I said it aggressive, but look at what I was doing. What I was doing was defending the church instead of ripping her to shreds. Ripping her to shreds. You've got to be able to not be distracted by the tone of voice, because if you do that, if you're able to not be distracted by the tone of voice, your life will go a lot better. You won't be as confused. You know what I mean? You won't be able to let charlatans trick you, because they know that the tone of their voice can really just kind of disarm you in such a way that you're not going to really think about the message, right? You're not going to think about the message, and it's effective. I'm not saying that strategy is wrong, right? But what I'm saying is what matters is the action, right? Because there's times where I'll change my tone of voice to make it softer and more with more pathos and stuff like that. There's times for that, and I talk to people all the time when they ask me about my tone and stuff like this. I say, look, if I'm, my YouTube channel is for a certain audience, right? But if you could just magically change my audience just like that, right? And all of a sudden now I'm speaking to a bunch of grandmothers, right? A bunch of grandmothers, more mature and stuff like that. That's my audience now. I have no choice. I have to speak to them, right? My content would be different. My content will be different. When I talk to my own grandmother about issues of woke church and stuff like that, my tone is different because I'm talking to a different audience, right? And I know that for that audience, if I'm gonna, disarm them and be more convincing, I'm gonna have to change my tone. And so there you go. There you go. I mean, the tone of your voice is a tool. It's absolutely a tool. You know what I mean? I could preach the gospel to a grandmother, and it would be the same content. But if I'm preaching it to to a thug in prison, then it's gonna be the same content, but it's gonna sound differently. The way that I speak to them will be different. If I'm street preaching at Temple University, which I've done before, and then I'm preaching to somebody in a nursing facility, which I've done before, it's gonna be the same message, but it's gonna sound very different. It's gonna sound very different, and that is necessary. It's necessary. And so there you go. I mean, that like, this is the thing. Like, I agree with Gavin Ortlund, but he's of course approaching this from the Big Eva perspective, right? And so he's not going to focus on the things that matter most likely. Let's give him a little bit more time.
Excuse me. Not just by how we treat the world, though that matters as well. They look at how Christians talk to each other. They look at how we treat each other, and that has an effect on their perception of the gospel. Put it even stronger.
I absolutely agree. And when they see someone ranting and raving, defending the Christians, as opposed to softly and calmly ripping Christians, that has an effect on them. I don't think that's what Gavin Ortlund is talking about here, but that absolutely has an effect on them. When pagans see David French on MSNBC, that hurts them. That affects their opinion of the gospel negatively. It's as simple as that. I can't make it more simple than that. His content is awful. And it wouldn't matter if he said it like a lunatic or in a soft tone the way he does with a gay lisp. The content hurts their perception of the gospel of Jesus Christ. It does, because it lies to them. It lies to them. And when you see Eddie Robles ranting like a lunatic, but he's actually telling you about the real gospel, the real truth, that helps them. And it might turn off some people, but it also speaks to some people. See, this is the part of the equation that I think lots of people always forget. Always forget when they see content like mine, which is polarizing. And I do it intentionally. I think this through. A lot of people think I just turn on the camera and just do whatever I feel like doing, right? But here's the thing. I think this through, right? My content is polarizing, and it definitely turns some people off. I understand that. It's an unhappy result. I don't want to turn people off, but I know that I do. But here's the thing. It speaks to people. There are certain people that it speaks to. There are certain people that it resonates with. And those people can't be forgotten. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. There are people that I can reach with my tone that someone with a softer tone could never reach. And we've got to remember those people as well. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that.
Some people will find the gospel to be incredible because of how Christians are talking not to them, but to each other. Now, I understand appeals about our witness can be overplayed and done badly, but this is nonetheless a reality. Christians snarling at each other is not a good look. Now, this is a tough topic, actually. It is actually a little nuanced.
Oh, boy. We're going to get into the nuance. We're going to get into the nuance here. I've been at this for 30 minutes, and now we're about to get into nuance, which means this is going to go much longer. We're going to stop there for now. We got about 4 minutes into a 20-minute video, so we'll continue this. It's as simple as that. We got to let Gavin have his day. In any case, I hope you found this video helpful. Have a great weekend. God bless.